you forget about everything and you just enjoy a content, good food, and then you're able to have conversations around that with your loved ones. Because one thing that we know is that we share the movies and the movie-going experience with people that we care about.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Luria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. And in this week's episode, we are unveiling a new interview series from our colleagues at the Box Office Company, brought to you by Boost by Box Office. Attract, Engage, and Retain is the name of a new series that will be bringing in marketing and tech executives from the exhibition industry to talk about some of the tricks of the trade and what makes their cinemas stand out. This debut episode will bring in Jimena Pardo, the marketing director of Cinepolis USA, speaking with myself and my colleague Michelle Villegas in the feature segment. But before we get to that, we've got a panel this week with Rebecca Pauley and Chad Kennerk of Box Office Pro, and Russ Fisher, the editorial director of Box Office Studios, a division of our company that does editorial services for movie theaters. Russ, Chad, Rebecca, welcome back. A lot to talk about this week. I think out of everyone here, Rebecca's the only one that went to the movies last week, unfortunately.
I went to the movies last weekend, and I bought tickets to see something, I think, next weekend. So I'm making use of that. I'm getting those points. I'm getting those $5 popcorn.
This is the AMC ecosystem.
Yeah.
You're in the AMC Stubs thing. That's great. I mean, you're using it, which is the whole point of it.
I went through a period of like, should I cancel it? It's like, no, it's Q1, nothing's coming out. Ride it out until things start hitting. So yeah, next week, March 5th, I'm seeing the Dolby re-release of Purple Rain, which you would have to strap me to a chair to get me not to go to it. And I caught up with The Brutalist, which I really, really love. Daniel, I know you're also a Vox Lux fan. I haven't seen the other Brady. And I learned his last name is pronounced Corbet, like sorbet.
Oh, well, come on. I have no idea. Russ, you didn't correct us once this entire award season. Now we know, like 3 days before the Oscars, we find out?
I can't remember being on the pod where I said it. Maybe I don't know.
If he doesn't win Best Director this year, I'm sure he'll be popping back up in future Oscar telecasts, because I don't know how this movie happened on the budget that it had. It looks amazing. It's 4 hours, historical drama. It's not like at no point did it lose my attention.
I think you've got a lot of good options there for Best Director. Coralie Farchère from The Substance, Sean Baker, who's been on this podcast before, for Anora, James Mangold with a very, efficient style of filmmaking with A Complete Unknown, and another one that we won't get into. I'm done talking about Emilia Perez, and I hope everybody else is.
I think Emilia Perez has gone and shot itself in its own foot.
You'd hope that the film itself would do that, but no. Guys, a quick reminder to everyone working anywhere in a job, what you say on social media is forever. Let that be a lesson and a valuable one. Let's go right into the news, guys. Coming off of a shaky second weekend for Captain America: Brave New World that saw a massive drop. We went from an $88 million 3-day debut and a $100 million 4-day debut to a $28 million hold. Yikes. But guys, it's not something in a vacuum here. A lot of the post-Avengers MCU continuity films, I don't include movies like Spider-Man Far From Home or the Deadpool Wolverine. Yeah. That's not part of it. Those are one-offs. But everything else, it's building up to a big story. I don't know, man. Russ, what's going on here?
At one point I probably could have come up with some theory, but you knew that they were going to be in for a rough ride with this one when everybody started coming out of it with comments like, oh, this is actually a sequel to The Incredible Hulk from 2008.
Yeah.
Sort of one of the least popular first wave Marvel movies.
Of talking to people who have seen the film over the last week, the best stuff I heard was, it's surprising that it was actually a Hulk sequel. And, it's really not all that bad. So if those are the only endorsements, I don't think I'm going to get out to catch this one in week 3.
No, I mean, it sounds like a Disney Plus movie, and they did a lot of reshoots, which is not unusual for Marvel, but you do have to wonder about that process where, I mean, they reshot significant portions of this movie at least one point and maybe multiple points. And so it's just kind of like, there's a part of their process that clearly isn't working. And they've already done this reevaluation with their TV series, with their streaming series, where they realize, like, hey, this formula that we've developed where we sort of make the show on the fly and retailer it and reshoot it as we go, find it as we go, isn't bearing fruit. And it seems like they're at that point of, having to contend with that on the feature side as well.
I hope so. If they took last year off, basically only Deadpool and Wolverine hitting in theaters, hopefully that gave them the time to reassess, and maybe it was just too late for Captain America to reap the benefits of that.
Yeah, I feel like since Endgame, they haven't had an Endgame. They've really been sort of throwing things out there that don't feel like part of a larger story. And I think that's what people really latched onto. These are pieces in a much larger story that's being built.
And that's been 6 years. I mean, we've seen other things come out that have captured youth audiences. I mean, it felt like in retrospect, if you were really a fan of that series, that Endgame for a lot of people was like, this is a good time to jump off.
Yeah. It feels a lot to me like going to see a band live that used to be really big in the early 90s or maybe late 80s.
Yeah.
Where if it's like the greatest hits that were around decades ago, you're there, you're singing along, you're excited. And when they start playing the new stuff, you go to the bathroom. Maybe you go grab a beer, right? You really don't have to sit through that part of the concert. And the concert just keeps going on and on. There's band members you never knew existed showing up. And I don't know. Again, I'm maybe a little bit overly grumpy with these series. The flip side to this, guys, is what else is going to open to $80 million plus? I mean, we can complain and criticize all we want. Nothing else is stepping up to these opening weekends. So I think we're stuck here, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, while it's still Q1 anyways, I mean, it's February. What do we expect out of February?
We've got the Oscars at the end of the week. A good Oscars this year. I think there's a lot of storylines, a very interesting number of movies, both, high profile, big studio tentpoles, some, rough around the edges, art house and specialty darlings, a trauma movie snuck in there. I love that. What are you guys feeling like for big surprises for winners this year?
Things haven't been so up in the air for the Oscars since the year Up in the Air got nominated for a ton of Oscars. Yeah, I mean, I just finished. We have our box office Oscar pool that I just drew up yesterday, and man, it was tough.
I don't know. Overall, for awards, I'm a pretty big believer in using the guilds as your oracle for what's going to happen, which tells you that Honora is likely going to take at least picture and director. But Conclave seems like a very likely dark horse candidate here.
I went for Baker for director, but Conclave for picture. I don't know, something about like Nora just feels a little too much maybe for some Academy voters. I don't know.
That's why we have
Academy
to root
voters,
for it.
yeah.
And it's not even a movie I loved, but that's what I'm rooting for. Yeah. Listen, Conclave is the vanilla choice. If you want to go vanilla.
I'm trying to beat my boyfriend in the Oscar ballot because he takes it really competitive. So the only way I'm going to ever do that is just predict the most boring option wins.
Yeah, there you go. But, Demi Moore winning the SAG award is really interesting. And I would not have put her as the Oscar, the likely winner of the Oscar. And I kind of think that's where we're going, which is, there's a whole legacy career there to think of too, which is always powerful in the Oscars, which clearly Pamela Anderson was kind of hoping to capitalize on, and you can't predict the substance.
But you have that kind of too in the leading actor category, the young talent, little baby Tims versus Ralph Fiennes, who It seems like Ray Fiennes would have a whole shelf full of Oscars at this point, just by the virtue of him being, his Ray Fiennes-ness.
I like the numbers game of Timothy facing off against Adrian Brody, where Adrian Brody is the current record holder for the youngest actor to win the Best Actor Oscar for The Pianist. And if Timothy Chalamet wins, he will dethrone Brody. And so having them face off against that, obviously, like, that's a stupid, train spotting detail. Like, it just doesn't matter, but it's a little bit fun for us.
Adrian Brody's from Jackson Heights, which is where I live. So Team Jackson Heights, I'm pulling for him, which is equally a stupid reason. But his performance was incredible.
I appreciate that Brody has had one of the weirder careers of someone who, is like keeps coming back into the awards conversation periodically, but in between just does
Redbox
all
action.
of this stuff,
he was in a Predator sequel at some point. Like, he's
all
shows
over
up
the
to
place.
anything. I love that. I love that type of actor. I mean, for me, that's an interesting career. Good luck to them. Good luck to them, because, man, they need to rebound. And it's good for the industry when the Oscars are culturally relevant, when people are paying attention and discover movies that they might have missed as part of this. And talking about old husks of decaying IP, we've got news about James Bond, everybody's favorite remnant of old Hollywood. That's
Remnant
still
of the old British
somehow
Empire.
still relevant, somehow still alive. Amazon making waves over the last week, taking creative control from Barbara Broccoli, who is the daughter of the longtime producer of these movies, Albert Cubby Broccoli. Amazon now has control on what happens creatively to the James Bond franchise. Not a coincidence that maybe a week before that, you get some rumors that Amazon is planning on opening overseas distribution offices. I think one thing leads to another in this universe. I don't want to get too much into who might be heading that project, but the names that you see floating around the trades that aren't us seem like the right fit and the right profile for them to release big movies like James Bond movies theatrically overseas into the future. A lot to unpack here. Ross, what's your off-the-cuff reaction to Amazon taking creative control of this franchise?
I'm going to preface this by saying that I'm not a James Bond fan. I've never been a James Bond fan. I like the idea of those movies, and then 30 minutes into each one, I'm kind of like, I'm done. But there was always an appeal in James Bond as a cultural event. So Eon Productions, the company that Barbara Broccoli ran with Michael G. Wilson, did a really good job of turning a new Bond movie into a huge event that would go over the course of like 2 years. They'd announce the thing with a splashy event in London with a new car and a watch, and you give you a big title treat, and then
it felt like a real trailblazer for the marketing collaboration that we're seeing. I mean, we've always seen that sort of thing, but I feel like definitely with Barbie, it's reached a new peak, and James Bond was really an innovator there on get you James Bond watch, get you James Bond.
Totally, yeah, exactly. The Spaceballs, the flamethrower, and so there was an appeal of Bond as weirdly this family-owned and family-controlled gigantic IP. Sony's been distributing the movies for a long time, or they did. But still, they weren't Sony movies, and they were still made in a kind of old-fashioned way, which was pretty neat. Even if I didn't like the movies, I like the idea. And we have not seen Amazon do that. And we've seen Amazon do a Lord of the Rings show that I think failed to succeed culturally on the level that anybody hoped it might. And the big fear is that that's going to be the fate for James Bond as well, that this old, familiar, reliable IP, which, by the way, each of those new movies still drives $1 billion in box office globally whenever they come out. And these movies are still going to be theatrical, probably. That seems to be the intent. But are they going to be able to drive them in the same way that the previous stewards drove them? And ultimately, is Amazon going to undermine them by creating, a series of TV spinoffs that do to James Bond what, Disney Plus streaming series did to the Marvel movies and to Star Wars?
I wonder what the demographics are on the current crop of, for the most recent Bond movie. I don't want to say they should try to appeal to young audiences by like casting a 22-year-old and having James Bond like ride around on one of those scooters. But I do wonder how much anyone under the age of 35 really cares about James Bond anymore. I mean, Amazon has the reach to get to a lot of these people. But I mean, I love Lord of the Rings. I never watched a single episode of the Amazon series. It just never captured my interest, and I never heard anything about it that made me curious.
So you're a fan of that Lord of the Rings franchise, Rebecca. Do you know anything about the show? Do you know anyone that watches the show? Do you know the title of the show?
The Rings of Power? The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power? And I caught up on the War of the Rohirrim, the animated movie, recently.
I mean, my concern is if you can't even reach the core fan base with your, streaming part of the equation while leaving the theatrical part untouched, that just doesn't give me a lot of confidence. Now, the flip side here is, as everybody who has listened to 5 seconds of this podcast knows, I'm a huge Rocky fan. Amazon has the rights for Rocky, which is not shy about having sequels, has spin-off sequels and everything. Even Stallone has floated the idea of like, hey, wouldn't it be great if someone did a streaming series of like the Rocky prequels or all of the villains over the years? But Amazon hasn't touched that yet, right? Like they haven't even gone through that. So it's not like they're going into these IPs that they just overspent on in buying MGM to try to mine out all of this content. They have been selective. What they have made on the streaming side doesn't seem to have worked. On the theatrical side, I think there's question marks. One of those question marks is I don't know how to feel about the fact that how many James Bond movies get made over a decade? 3? Maybe 2?
It used to be more, but lately they have taken a lot of time, and that has hurt the James Bond movies for a very long time have always felt like, even at their fastest rate of production, they've felt like they're often a little bit behind the times. They're reincorporating and reacting to trends from 3 years ago. And this was even the case where, the most successful reinvention of James Bond, which was casting Daniel Craig and making Casino Royale. Casino Royale has, these parkour sequences, which felt 3 years too late. When that movie came out,
he's playing poker in the movie, like 4 years after poker stopped being a thing.
But here's the thing,
culture, right?
To be fair, I feel like
the movie is great.
Yeah,
the
that's
movie
true.
works.
The movie works perfectly.
And the fact that stuff was old at the time, nobody really remembers that anymore because the movie works.
Well, the Mission Impossible movies, I mean, I considered like when the most recent one came out, the AI thing was a bit like, not old, but we'd already been a bit played out. And like, I mean, I'm not particularly a fan of that franchise, but like you say, Russ, I mean, it clearly worked. Yeah, I mean, it's just about the quality of the movies.
I'd argue that the AI thing in the last Mission Impossible movie was actually too early, because we just weren't quite there yet with everybody being sort of aware of and worried about it. I think that AI in, Megan 2.0 and in the new mission is actually more perfectly timed now than it was when both of those movies came out originally.
I mean, evil billionaires are in vogue right now. So that's like a mainstay of the James Bond franchise.
The Brutalist, Nora. Man. I mean, we're in a golden age.
Even in real life, you can draw some inspiration there.
Well, and that's the big question, right? Is the Amazon James Bond going to be like, Blofeld is not so bad?
Yeah.
He had some good points.
The revisionism can go in a lot of directions.
He owns a newspaper and da-da-da-da.
Yeah,
exactly. But, there are more questions than answers about anything at this point. But just I think a lot of fans are frustrated because a big part of the appeal of Bond was that, the family controlled it. And the family controlled it to the degree where when Christopher Nolan wanted to make a Bond movie, he didn't do it because they weren't going to give him the control that he wanted. And it's like, well, guys, if you're just going to sign it away to Amazon, why didn't we at least get a Chris Nolan Bond movie out of it?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you give Tarantino the chance to make something crazy if you're just going to give Amazon the keys anyway, you know.
And if it goes that way, by the way,
fans flipped out when they made James Bond blonde. Like,
yes,
yeah, no. but I think there's something interesting in that. I don't know if it's good, but interesting if you go like DC Warner Brothers on having 4 different James Bond franchises coexisting across streaming and theatrical. I don't know how all this is going to end up, but I go back to the point that Rebecca raised. How many people under 35 years old care about James Bond? And how much of that is due to the fact that you get 3 Marvel movies a year plus TV shows versus maybe 3 James Bond movies every decade? So I don't know how this works out.
Mission Impossible's kind of taken the place of, I mean, it's the American James Bond, and it actually comes out regularly.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the mission movies, even the mission movies are slow. But yeah, the point is that James Bond is a Cold War relic that was mostly successfully reinvented in the Daniel Craig era. You know, Casino Royale did a lot to bring that character forward into a modern era where, you know, it felt like a character that had a place in the current political climate. But that political climate of Casino Royale is now wildly out of date. You know, that movie was put together 20 years ago. We live in a completely different world now. Everything about there's so much about the cynicism of Casino Royale that now feels almost naive, you know? And so what do you do to modernize Bond yet again? And how do you make it relevant to an under 35 audience? And I don't know the answer to that question.
They need to cast a younger Bond to get some of the younger generation hooked into this. I think that's one thing we haven't necessarily seen a very young Bond before.
Or non-British Bond, which I know is completely taboo to some people.
I mean, under you know, Broccoli and Wilson, it would have been completely taboo. Absolutely. Under Amazon, yeah, who knows? And it's also, we haven't mentioned that Wilson is retiring, which is also kind of part of the motivator for this, where I think it seems like he was just like, okay, you know what? I think I've done my course here. And that, I think, was also a precipitating factor in Barbara Broccoli being willing to kind of hand it over to Amazon. And I would love to know, I hope one day we get a book about the Bond era, like the no Bond movie era between, you know, the creation and release of No Time to Die and the handing over to Amazon. There's something really interesting to report there in what they tried and failed to do.
I'm curious as to what the timing of when we're going to hear about the new James Bond, when we're going to start. If we'll see anything at CinemaCon. I mean, it does coincide with AMC, with Amazon showing up at CinemaCon for the first time.
I don't think
not
they're going to
not see anything. Obviously,
the best case scenario, we get a logo or a title card up there, but I think they haven't even started the casting process yet.
No.
The big question I have in all of this is what I think every exhibitor around the world is asking themselves: am I going to get a fair theatrical window with this?
Yes.
Right now, we're coming off of a theatrical window of, I think, under a month for Dogman, which was the biggest new release of January. We got under a month theatrical on that. Meanwhile, Moana 2, another family film, is going to go on Disney Plus after a 105-day theatrical window. It's not a 90-day window. It's an old school window, 100 plus days. So even right now, we're seeing the window behave in ways that logic wouldn't really hint towards. You'd think that something like Dogman would have a little bit of a bigger run, because really from here until Snow White, it's not going to have any other new releases to challenge it. Nevertheless, Universal makes a decision, and next thing I know, Fandango is pushing it a lot harder on Fandango at home than they ever were at Fandango in theaters. So I think the questions are out there in terms of what happens on a window. I love to see Disney, a studio that was very aggressive, going to Disney Plus, that was very aggressive, releasing their own PVOD platform that I think has long since been forgotten about after Scarlett Johansson killed it, murdered that thing a couple of years back. So I don't know where this all goes. I'd love to see something like 100 plus days. Do we get that? I'm not sure we can take any bets with the way Amazon has been, let's say, giving theaters something like Red One and then saying, you know what? We're going to go on a short window on this and put it straight to Prime. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence either.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon's business strategy is always going to be to drive people to Amazon. And so the windowing question is a significant one. And that's why I bring up the fact that, Bond movies are consistently billion-dollar global earners. They are, if nothing else, even a mediocre Bond movie sells a lot of tickets around the globe. It's a big deal for exhibitors. And so even if they do theatrical with this, is it going to be reliable in the same sense? And if it's not, what's the incentive for distributors to put muscle, or for exhibitors to put muscle behind it in the same way that they normally would with a Bond movie?
The irony of this franchise going from a British family-owned, creatively franchise to being owned by a rich tech billionaire that also owns newspapers
Lex
and a
Luthor,
media
yeah.
conglomerate. And on top of it, this franchise being one that's probably the most, let's call it, product placement forward in terms of luxury brands.
Yes.
And you associate that with Amazon is known for more for like getting a good deal on things or steep discounts.
It's
I just
slightly
don't
better
see
than
how you can go
Gmail.
from like Rolex to Prime Day.
Right? Are we going to see him like adding James Bond adding things to his wish list and like going in disguise as like an Amazon delivery person?
We'll find out the answer to all these questions and more in the coming months. Like Rebecca says, hopefully at CinemaCon, we'll get at least some hints as to a timeline of what to expect and when from James Bond in its new Amazon era. And now moving over to the feature segment of our episode, we are joined by Michelle Villegas from the Box Office Company and Jimena Pardo, the marketing director of Cinepolis USA, in this month's edition of Attract, Engage, and Retain, a new marketing and tech series from our colleagues over at Boost by Box Office. That's coming up after this commercial break.
Imagine a seamless digital experience for your cinema, one designed with care, respect, and a commitment to excellence. That's what Boost by Box Office offers. We're proud to serve cinemas worldwide, delivering personalized websites, apps, and e-commerce tools to enhance customer loyalty and drive sales. Experience Boost and let us help your cinema thrive. Email sales@boxoffice.com or search for Boost by Box Office.
And we're back here on the Box Office Podcast with a new feature that I'm introducing with my colleagues over at the Box Office Company called Attract, Engage, Retain with Boost by Box Office. I'm joined this week by my colleague, Michelle Villegas, who has been on the podcast before. It's great to have you again. Michelle, you've been working closely with me to develop this interview series. Can you tell us a little bit about the concept, the thinking, and the idea behind it to bring it to our audience today?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and thank you for doing this series. Really, the goal of this series is to dive into marketing tactics that basically start from the top of the funnel of the moviegoer experience. So all about how can you attract your moviegoers, what makes you different from the other competitor, how can you actually get your customers to find you online. And then further down the funnel is how to engage with them, right? How do you make sure that they know how to buy their tickets, that they buy your food and beverage, that they come to your bowling, they play pickleball. And then at the end of the day, it's all about how can you retain that customer. Yeah. So really one of the things that we're looking to do with this podcast is interview marketing directors, director of operations, IT. You know, it's not just about marketing. Obviously, there's so many other parts to that moviegoer experience that goes beyond just digital.
And as we talk about Box Office, the company, not the concept, you guys are rolling out a number of innovations and solutions for clients across the industry. Can you talk about what some of those services are that Box Office can bring exhibitors today?
Absolutely. So actually, Scott Hanlon and I had a great opportunity to talk about SEO, search engine optimization. And one of the key things that we're going to be launching with Daniel's co-host, Russ Fisher, is content services, is how can you actually start building and utilizing AI technology out there that can help actually support the synopsis, the movie synopsis you get from studios. You know, upcoming, we've got great movies. You've got another Exorcist, Karate Kid. You know, why not start building out blog content that helps your customers know, okay, do you know what? I'm going to go
to the Cinepolis website and find out more information about why should I go see the Karate Kid at the Cinepolis or the Flicks. So what we're going to be building out is affordable content, right? Like how can you actually start building blogs and
editorial content for movie theaters
Exactly.
and their slates. So it's a really cool concept that our colleague Russ Fisher over at the Box Office Studios is coordinating here with our Box Office Boost division, bringing this fresh and unique editorial marketing content for cinemas at a very accessible level. So it doesn't have to be a very expensive solution. It can be on a case-by-case basis that makes sense for cinemas. For those exhibitors that are interested in finding out more about this marketing service, how should they get in touch with you?
Again, on LinkedIn is also great, but if you can email us at sales@boxoffice.com, keeping it simple, please contact us. We'd love to speak to you and talk about what we can do.
Now, in today's conversation, we are going to be speaking with Jimena Pardo, the marketing director over at Cinepolis USA. It was great having that conversation with her, and she is going to be the debut subject here in this interview series. Michelle, you thought Jimena was a perfect fit for the first conversation. Why is that?
Now that I live in Mexico City, I thought it was really interesting that she's actually made the shift from Cinepolis, Mexico, over into the States. And I think culturally it's really interesting to see how different the movie-going experience is depending on the country. And I thought it was really great to see her and hear from her on, okay, what are the different marketing tactics? How does that differ from country to country?
So without any further interruption, here is our interview with Jimena Pardo from Cinepolis USA, part of the Attract, Engage, Retain interview series brought to you by Boost by Box Office. And we are here with Jimena Pardo, the marketing director of Cinepolis USA. Jimena, welcome to the podcast. You're here with me, Daniel Luria, and my colleague, Michelle Villegas from the Box Office Company. Great having you here. And let's start with the role that you currently serve here at Cinepolis USA. Could you explain a little bit of your day-to-day focuses, and specifically in terms of how Cinepolis engages moviegoers to shape the overall customer experience?
We in this industry have been focusing on reviving this cinematic joy, so to say it, since the pandemic hit. It has been kind of hard just to revive the habit. And we at Cinepolis are very conscious about the importance of reviving this habit on the moviegoers, just be a top of mind in the entertainment options that people have. There are a lot of options that we all have in terms of entertainment. So I think keeping the movie going experience at the top of mind, it's our main focus. So this year we kind of came up with the strategy that we named Reviving Cinematic Joy. And we are working really hard towards bringing that happiness and magic back to the mind of the users. So it's not something that you do one time or twice a year and then you forget about it. Or we're aiming for users to kind of not care so much about the content, but take the movie going experience as a really cool experience, just to have it more frequently, despite the content, just want to go to the movies.
It's about finding that frequency, right? And it's a core tenet, I know, of what the Box Office Company is doing in attracting, engaging, and retaining that moviegoer, I think is what Jimena is saying.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like what you were saying, Jimena, is more around top of funnel, right? If you think from a marketing perspective, a lot of these people maybe aren't regular moviegoers. So it's more about, okay, what are the tactics that you've been implementing on your side to try and attract new customers, right? Because really that whole top of the funnel consumer is all about, okay, well, how can I get them to think first of, if I want to do something this weekend, I'm going to want them to think I want them to go to the movies. So what is it that in terms of marketing tactics and activities are you looking at implementing in Cinepolis?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing we are focusing on is really strengthening the customer loyalty and the brand affinity. So I think connecting with people as an authentic brand with the brand's personality, brand's authenticity, and brands initiative that really resonate with them, it's a key component to have them want to come back. So there are many choices out there, but why are they choosing Cinepolis to watch a movie? So on the one side, building loyalty, and then on the other one, leveraging from the brand affinity and our strengths just to have them come back every time.
Now, we know that you've worked both in the Mexican side of the Cinepolis circuit and now on the US side as well. And it's always fascinating to me. You go everywhere in the world and you see how different moviegoers behave differently by country. And I want to get that perspective from you. What would you say are the different movie-going purchasing habits between the US and Mexico? I know what's similar, but what's different between those two?
Yeah, that has been a really amazing journey for me coming from the Mexico side and getting to know and learn more about the US market. I think there are a couple of things that are really different. The first one that I would say is that content consumption behaves really different in terms of where the movie theater is located. And maybe in Mexico, since we are bigger and we have a lot more theaters, that at least to me when I was there, it was not that evident. But being in the US, I've learned that community based marketing, it's something really, really important, and users really engage when they see that you as a brand care about where they're at, so that you're not just running a nationwide campaign across every state, but that you're taking the time to analyze the specific components of each location and talk to them on a more personalized way. That's one of the things. And then on the other side, I think in Mexico, pre-sales are really something that people are
Don't exist,
super
right?
excited and get crazy about. And then in the US market, I feel like people wait a little bit more to hear about the movie or to make sure it's worth watching it. Or I'm not sure if it's that the thought process. I've been in the US market a little over 6 months, so I'm still learning and I'm in love about learning everything about this market. But I think the excitement about pre-sales takes a little bit longer to kind of engage them into planning to go to the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting, those movie-going cultures, how they differ. And you spoke about this a second ago, Jimena. In Mexico, it's one thing when you're Cinepolis, you're the biggest exhibitor in the country.
Right.
So when people want to go to the movies, you're really competing on a national level against one other circuit. In the US, you've got dozens of competitors, sometimes 3, 4 competitors in a single DMA. And I think that leads me to SEO. Now, Michelle, here, you've been on the podcast with us talking about SEO strategies, and you've worked with Jimena and Cinepolis USA on establishing some of those strategies in the US market. Could you guys share some of the work you've been doing together?
Yeah. And maybe I can go first, Jimena. I think one of the key things that we've worked on is the location pages. To your point, obviously, in terms of the community focused, etc. I mean, local marketing and local SEO tactics is very, very important in able to get your brand in front of mind locally. And one of the things we've worked on a lot is the theatre information pages, those landing pages that those customers land on from Google, even from your social media platforms, etc. Those are the pages that need to really shine and show the information on what makes Cinepolis different, what makes the movie-going experience unique at Cinepolis. I'm going to eat amazing food because we were just at dining and we went to Cinepolis in Austin and it was delicious. So I do think those location pages and some of the data we've seen already, I mean, we've driven and increased the keywords in the top 3 positions of Google and increased that by about 45%. So it's obviously an important tactic. So that's something, obviously, as you know, we've been working on. And I don't know if you have anything else to add on your side, Jimena.
Sure. No, I totally agree with you, Michelle, that looking at the strategy of first, like the big pillar is, of course, reviving cinematic joy. And then we have these directives that are based on craft flavorful experiences as one of our main strengths, because we do have amazing food that make the experience really different. And then we also are focusing, as said, on leveraging and building really connections with our community, and emotionally being kind of in their lives on a daily basis, whether is it on social media, whether is it on Google. When they are searching for it, we want to be at the top of that, to be considered as the best options on what they're looking for. Because the movie, we know it's across all competitors, but why are they coming to have that with us? And SEO has been, and that's it's going to be like one of our main tools just to be at the top. And it requires a lot of work and a lot of analysis. And then I love data driven decision making. And I think, Michelle, you and I, and all of our teams have been working a lot on analyzing the data and optimizing and seeing the differences that we need to adjust in one side that might work really well, and then on the other landing page might not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an important factor. I think for any movie theater that is competing with a number of other theaters out there, a lot of moviegoers, when they go online, they're just looking to see a movie, a specific movie. Many of the times, you want to make sure that those specific offerings you have are easy to find, easy to identify, to make sure that all those amenities, those competitive advantages you invested in, you've marketed, that they really shine and connect with those moviegoers. Jimena, we often talk about the challenge that exhibition has right now in making sure that the moviegoer on the couch, that can watch anything they want on the couch, in many times with great technology, many times movies that are currently playing at your cinemas. What's that challenge of making sure that they go from the couch to one of your theaters? Can you take me through that consumer journey for Cinepolis? What are the tactics you use to get them to the parking lot and through your doors?
Right. I think you've hit there a question that it's a kind of a hurting point, right, in exhibition industry. And I think across entertainment, like, people are every time more and more resistant to going out if the experience is not worth it or amazing, because we have a lot of options, yes, but we also discovered at the pandemic that we could do a lot of things remotely. And some people kind of fell in love with being at home. So getting them out takes a lot more than it used to take, right? I think one of the main things that we need to focus on is getting them back one time and delivering an amazing experience from end to end, so that they actually remember what it's like to be in the movie, like not worrying about the cell phone, not worrying about what are you going to snack on. You don't have to do the dishes after you snack on for a whole movie. So I think if we are able to get them back and deliver an extraordinary experience from when they find the movie at the digital environment and then all the way to the physical environment, we're going to be able to increase frequency, because people are going to realize that they really like it. Like, that's on their minds. It lives there. We just need to make them remember how amazing it is to go to the movies, and for 2 hours or the runtime that we choose, really you forget about everything and you just enjoy a content, good food, and then you're able to have conversations around that with your loved ones. Because one thing that we know is that we share the movies and the movie going experience with people that we care about.
What I love about the movie going experience and what you touch upon here, Jimena, is rather than thinking of movie going as something you do once a year as a special occasion, that it's something you can do all the time, that it's simple, that you can buy your tickets online, that you can find your seat as soon as you get there. You don't have to fight or snake the sweater across 3 rows of seats the way we used in the 90s, right? Or show up 40 minutes before the showtime and be in those long lines. It's not like that anymore.
No.
So it's really reminding the consumer at all levels that this is a convenient, easy way to spend your evening.
I think, Jimena, that's one thing that Cinepolis have really taken to market recently in the last kind of 2 to 3 years is the movie and a meal concept. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how that's trying to bring back people that maybe, they want to have a meal that's connected to the movie and it's a different experience.
Right. Thanks for bringing that up, Michelle. Yeah, that movie in a meal is a project that we are really excited about every time that we choose a movie and we start building all the menu and everything around it. We are really excited. And it's even better when we see the engagement we get from our audiences. So that kind of has its strategic based on we knowing that we as humans like the experience. So whenever you find yourself giving like a special place in top of your mind of something you like, it's because the experience and the connected emotion that you kind of got you to something really special. So movie in a meal is based on advertising the movie going experience so that you really feel immersed into the environment and not only watching the content with your popcorn that we love popcorn. I know we all do. But this is like an enhanced experience. So we build a menu around the movie. We try to tie it into specific moments of that movie so that it really surprises you when your food is delivered. So it's not that like you make your order and you get your food all at once and then you're kind of managing how to put one plate and what do you eat first and then no. So we kind of spread that out through the movie so that you get your food during the movie at specific moments so that make your experience more enjoyable.
I think that answers part of the last question we have for you. This series is all about going into marketing strategies that attract, engage, and retain moviegoers. We already asked about how you get those folks out of the couch and through your doors. I want to ask about how you retain and engage those moviegoers to make sure that one visit turns into 2, 3, or 4 per year, hopefully more. When it comes to making sure these moviegoers keep on coming back to your theater specifically, what are some of the tactics that you use?
Right. In that point, our loyalty program is one of our biggest strengths. We have a very engaged community that we love and we take care of as our most precious thing because we value that they come to see a movie and then they decide to join the loyalty program. So we really find value in their giving us a space in their lives and in their heart because we all know that every time we put our email into something, we are allowing that brand into our lives. So that's a very important thing for us. And we tailor the communication in a very personalized way because we really want people to feel that we're talking to them specifically and not only just communicating things and hope for the best, we really want to establish a conversation and we want to let them know that we pay attention to their preferences and that we know what they like and just that make sure that they get the communication of things that really get them excited.
As you say, it's so important, especially retention. Now, there's so many other movies that are based on, you've got to say, okay, is there good content this week? Is there, what's the next thing can we do? What can we eventize? Do people want to go to bowling? It's becoming more and more competitive out there. So I think you've nailed it on the head. I think loyalty is the base and that's where you need to leverage more so than ever. So
Right, and always be thinking and how to get better and make it a customer-centered strategy, because sometimes I feel like brands, we focus on what we want them to know or what we want them to do, but I think changing the perspective and turning it into what as a user they are expecting and what the things that they value, and then putting a strategy together like customer centered, it does deliver a better results and a better connection with the brand.
Well, Jimena, thank you so much for joining us. That's Jimena Pardo, the marketing director of Cinepolis USA here on the Box Office Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And that was Jimena Pardo from Cinepolis USA and Michelle Villegas from the Box Office Company. Earlier, you heard from Russ Fisher, Rebecca Polly, and Chad Kennerk. Thank you again for listening, and we will be back next week with a new episode. The Box Office Podcast comes out every Thursday, so don't forget to subscribe, and we will talk to you again very soon.